This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds and Reynolds, the industry leader in automotive technology. Learn how Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can help you unlock your full potential by visiting rayray.com/spark-AI. That's REY.com/spark-AI.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, September 19th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, VW will hike prices for most 2026 models. Automakers and suppliers warn the unpredictability of tariffs make it harder to justify U.S. investments. And the Senate confirms a new NHTSA chief. Plus, Pied Piper has a new look at how well dealerships are doing using their websites to set up service appointments.
The very first step to keeping those customers, as well as everybody else, is making it super easy and satisfying, let's say, to schedule service.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Volkswagen of America is raising starting prices on most 2026 models. In some cases, they're the second price hikes by VW since the U.S. slapped steep tariffs on light vehicle imports in April. The latest price increases by VW range from 2.9 to 6.5%, depending on the model. The VW brand's U.S. sales plunged 29% in the second quarter and 13% in the first half. Automakers and suppliers are urging the Trump administration to end unpredictable expansions of tariffs, saying they're making it harder to justify investments in the U.S. That's the message of a letter this week to the Trump administration from automotive trade groups and associations representing other industries. The business groups criticized the recent expansion of steel and aluminum tariffs to cover more than 400 new products, including auto parts and industrial robotics. They say it was implemented without adequate notice and creates more cost and uncertainty for U.S. businesses. The letter comes as the Trump administration appears poised to expand the number of vehicle parts subject to auto tariffs. And the U.S. Senate has voted to confirm a new NHTSA chief. The Senate voted on Thursday to confirm Jonathan Morrison to head the agency, along with 47 other nominees to other positions. It's the first time that NHTSA has had a permanent leader in 3 years. Morrison is a former lawyer at Apple and chief counsel at NHTSA during President Trump's first term. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Volkswagen's planned price hikes for the next model year come at a pivotal time for the automaker. Our own Jake Neer spoke with automotive news reporter Jack Walsworth today about the move and how dealers might react.
Jack, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Great. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So, Volkswagen of America is raising prices on most of its 2026 models. How much of this is about tariffs?
It's kind of tough to say. Volkswagen hasn't come out and said this is because of tariffs, but kind of like reading in between the lines, it definitely seems because of tariffs. What's interesting with Volkswagen's lineup is a lot of the vehicles were either refreshed or redesigned for the 2025 model year, which is typically when you see price increases. But the fact that they're raising prices again for the 2026 model year, when there's been like hardly any significant changes, kind of makes you think, oh, it's likely because of tariffs. Volkswagen, like many brands, is reliant on imports. They make vehicles in Mexico, Germany, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. Most of their volume comes out of Mexico. The vehicles that come out of Germany are more lower volume, but still are significant. So it kind of seemed like this was probably going to happen at some point. Volkswagen, to their credit, back in April, said they were going to price guarantee vehicles through May. They got extended through June. And then we saw a couple increases in mid-July. And then as these 2026 model years have come out, more increases there. So, in some ways it seemed inevitable, but, it's just kind of like the next chapter on this, I guess.
Yeah, as you just mentioned, and as you say in your reporting, Volkswagen seems to be sort of especially exposed to tariffs in this case. But I'm curious how much of that could change maybe with the new trade terms. Obviously, negotiations are going on. We already have a framework in the EU. Do you think that there's still a lot up in the air for VW?
Yeah, it does seem that way. With like I said, the vehicles they get out of Germany, it's the Golf GTI and the Golf R and the ID Buzz. Those are all relatively low volume, but they're kind of halo vehicles. They bring a lot of eyeballs to the brand. The GTI and the R in this latest round of increases had the most significant jump. Up close to 6.5%. We don't have ID Buzz pricing, but that potentially could go up. And I think a lot of people like those vehicles, but it's always the price is noticeable. So if Volkswagen gets some relief on EU tariffs, that would it's still going to be higher than what they were pre-tariffs, but that would certainly be better than the 27.5% that they're facing right now. And with the vehicles coming out of Mexico, like I said earlier, those are some really big volume nameplates. The Tiguan has historically been their best seller. We don't have 2026 model year pricing, but even if that's up a little bit, that would be the compact crossover segment is super super competitive. And if Volkswagen's just redesigned their Tiguan, it's the latest and best, and if the price has to go up, that's going to have an impact. So if they can get some relief out of Mexico, it is worth noting that Volkswagens made in Mexico are USMCA compliant, so that it could have been worse. It's not like Audi, where Audi has the Q5 also made in Mexico that is not compliant. So Volkswagen brand is feeling a little less pain, but I think Volkswagen, like all automakers, they're hoping for clarity. And Volkswagen Group leadership has kind of alluded to, like, once they have clarity on tariffs, that might be when they make decisions about potential plant expansions or adding new production to U.S. sites. They've got the Chattanooga plant. They could potentially add other brands and models there. There's the Scout Motors plant under construction in South Carolina that's been kind of alluded to being a potential spot for additional Volkswagen Group production. But I think we might not see those announcements until Volkswagen gets clarity on the tariffs are going to be going forward. So more to come for sure.
I also assume that dealers are going to be sort of waiting very patiently, hopefully, about what will happen with that. As we mentioned on the show already, VW brands U.S. sales pretty rough first half of the year. They've already been down. Price increases, I assume, not great news for dealers.
Yeah, I know it's going to be another thing for them to work through. At least they do have newish products. The Tiguan it just came out in May of this year as a redesign. The Taos and Jetta were freshened last year, not significant. I mean, but they're at least the lineup is somewhat new. It's not like they have a super old lineup here and then the price increases come. But yeah, another hoop for them to jump through for sure.
Jack Walsworth covers VW for us here at Automotive News. Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, Jake.
Coming up, a new look at which auto brands are best at scheduling service appointments by phone or website. That's next on Daily Drive.
As your business gets more complex, it feels like productivity can't go any higher. You need a way to move forward to a future where you don't have to start every interaction from scratch. You don't have to search for actionable information. You don't have to manually pull data to make decisions. You need a future where the complex is made simple and you can do more with less. How do you get there? It all starts with a spark. Unlock your full potential with the next generation of automotive dealership technology that actually does some of the heavy lifting for you by texting leads, transcribing calls, making data-backed recommendations, and boosting your overall productivity so that you can spend your time and energy on what truly matters: selling cars and growing your business. Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can empower your dealership to operate more efficiently and effectively than ever before, so you can do more, sell more, and make more. To learn how Spark AI can help your dealership reach its full potential, visit rayray.com/spark-AI today. That's REYREY.com/spark-AI to learn more.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Dealership service customers want a seamless experience when scheduling a service appointment, either by phone or through the store's website. Pied Piper's Cam and Fran O'Hagan speak with Automotive News senior retail editor Dan Shine about what differentiated the brands on top of their rankings for scheduling service calls effectively from those near the bottom.
Fran O'Hagan, welcome back to Daily Drive, and to Cam O'Hagan, welcome for the first time.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So Pied Piper's back with another index, I guess you would say, from the brands and how they do with service effectiveness. Tell me what you guys looked at this time around.
Sure. So we have been measuring the brands for service telephone for a while and ranking them. In other words, what happens when customers try to call and schedule an appointment. But this year, for the first time, yes, we measured what happens when they call on the phone, but we also measured what happens when they go to a dealer website and schedule service online. We combined those two to create a new service scheduling effectiveness that measures it both ways.
And how are brands ranked or measured or judged to come up with this ranking?
The easiest way to think of it is the first step, let's call it the ante to play, is to meet customer expectations. And if you think about it, if you're calling on the phone or if you're scheduling online, really what you want is to quickly be able to reach someone or something that can give you an appointment, short amount of time, and the appointment isn't too far out. It's not 4 weeks out or 8 weeks out. It's a reasonable amount of time. So those two things are really the only things that customers are thinking about when they set out to schedule service. Now, there are also a bunch of things that dealerships can do that go above and beyond that. And the dealerships with the highest customer loyalty tend to be the ones who go above and beyond.
I'd say another one. So this is year's first year measuring service website effectiveness. Another important aspect of that, both service website, service phone, both of them share the importance of quickly reaching someone or something. They'll schedule an appointment online. That's not too far out. But another aspect of service website effectiveness is what's the follow-up confirmation like? Do you receive anything? Do you receive both email and text? And that part's important as well, because you submit your service inquiry. Am I going to show up to the dealership and are they going to say, who are you? What? Or can you actually get it? And that's an important satisfier. So we measure that as well. The consistency of doing both of those. And I'd say the results that we found this year are a lower rate of consistency than we probably would have predicted prior to getting the data.
When things went poorly, when people used a website to try and schedule an appointment at a dealership, what were some of the things that you kind of found over and over that went wrong for consumers?
Let's say it's a mix of digital failures, such as the appointment calendar within the program not working. That came up as a reason multiple times. The other, I'd say the most common, is requiring VIN number either by phone or through the website. And how many of us know our VIN number off the top of our head right now? Unlikely. So that's a barrier as well.
And for switching out to those brands that scored well when it came to service telephone effectiveness, what were some kind of the common traits or takeaways that you noticed with the high performing brands?
So the top performing brand on the phone side was Lexus at a score of 68 on average out of their dealerships. And what that meant was the rate of a customer calling up trying to set up a service appointment that resulted in an appointment being scheduled 91% of the time. The industry average is 81%. A lot of the brands are neck and neck, but that's a pretty big jump ahead of the average. And their average number of days out for the earliest available appointment was less than half the amount of time compared to the industry average. They're less than 2 days out on average compared to nearly 4 for the industry. And then the rate of the unprompted, the service associate asking about any other services the customer needs or may want upselling opportunity that occurred about a third of the time. The rate of that occurring for the industry, though, is a lot less, about 18%. So the top brands are doing it at more than double the rate on a per customer basis.
And then also, I guess we have to talk a little bit about for bad things that maybe went poorly when customers tried to call on the phone. What are some of those hiccups that kind of keep occurring when you study these brands?
Well, I'd say that similar those same metrics, but on the bottom end, either a combination of digital problems such as not reaching the dealership or being dropped in transfer or requiring bin, combination of all of those issues or other ones, the lowest brands in terms of overall performance per telephone, the customers getting an appointment for a specific date and time in the 50s and 60s% of the time. So a big drop compared to the industry.
And for web, there's another angle to consider, and that is it easy to change your appointment or cancel your appointment?
Yeah.
And if you look at the rankings of the brands for their web performance, the ones at the bottom also tend to be, let's call it negligent, and not give their customers a way to easily change or cancel the appointment without having to call somebody.
Let's talk about, you mentioned, Cam mentioned the Lexus was scored the highest in the telephone effectiveness. Who were the 2 through 5 in the telephone effectiveness rankings?
So 2 through 5 for telephone. Second place is Subaru, score of 65. Lexus was at the top of the 68. Third place was Mini with the 64. So Mini was high in both of these. Toyota with the 63, and fifth, BMW with the 62.
And what about for a website? What's 1 through 5 for website effectiveness?
So for the website side, Porsche was on top with an average score of 71. Industry average for reference came out to a 59. Second place was Mini, so Mini was high in both. That's why their overall service scheduling effective score was number 1. Mazda was third place for the web side with 66, followed by BMW 65, and fifth place Cadillac with 65 as well.
So those kind of scores were combined somewhat, and to make an overall ranking, and Cam mentioned Mini came out on top because they just, based off being high in both of these ones. What are the top 5 overall?
Top 5 overall. So for overall service scheduling effectiveness, which is an average of the phone and web aspect, Mini on top of an overall average score of 66. Lexus was 64. BMW was 64. Mazda was 64. And then Honda was 63. Industry average of 59.
All right. So what's the overall takeaway for dealerships and their brands when they're thinking about, an important fixed ops, always important for the bottom line of dealerships? What should they be mindful of, the lessons that they can learn from this on making it easy for people to come in and for service?
So what we find from talking with service directors at the large dealer groups, for example, they wake up in the morning thinking about, how do I hold on to these 3, 4, 5-year-old car owners? I want to keep them. I don't want them to go to an independent. And the very first step to keeping those customers, as well as everybody else, is making it super easy and satisfying, let's say, to schedule service. What we also have found is that what we're measuring, what's happening on the phone or what's happening with the website, tends to be invisible. And you can have a brilliant service director. If the brilliant service director just isn't aware of what's breaking and what's happening, they can't really manage their business. So it's super important to actually know what is happening, both on the phone and through web.
Okay. Well, always interesting insights into service, fixed operations at dealerships and their brands that they represent. Cam, Fran, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Pied Pipers Cam and Fran O'Hagan spoke with Automotive News Senior Retail Editor Dan Shine. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Jack Walsworth and John Irwin for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on service and parts, tariffs, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back over the weekend for our Weekend Drive edition of the show. Automotive News journalists Hannah Lutz and Mike Martinez talk about the biggest news stories of the past week, including Ford's decision to move to a new headquarters.
One way to attract and retain the best talent is by having the most state-of-the-art, desirable places to work.
They are smart to do this because they recognize who they're competing with. They're competing with Silicon Valley.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.